Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fifth episode of JustDario Cigar Time. Today, we are going to talk about two things. In the first part, of course, we're going to talk about Donald Trump, and in particular, the impact that realistically is going to have on markets, US, and global economies in the next 4 years. And in the second part, we're going to talk about and discuss what the Federal Reserve did this week. And what does it mean? And what will be the consequences of yet another cut in the federal fund rate? Okay. So part number one, Donald Trump. First of all, very, politely, it should be the case, and in cavalry, I like to congratulate the Donald Trump for winning the U.S. presidential election that, with all due respect, have been very, very civilized. Everyone was in the media and in podcasts on social, was like scared the shit out of people, like, oh, if it's gonna be like chaos, there is not gonna be same-day result, there is gonna be cheating and so on. In reality, this last round of U.S. presidential elections has been a great example of democracy in all due respect. So kudos to the U.S. Congratulations to the new incoming president. But fairly speaking, also, need to recognize and give some congratulations as well for the current president in charge, Joe Biden, because, to a certain respect, the elections went the way they went, also because of him, and it looks like he had quite tight what could have been the risk and the apparatus and so on, and he remained extremely civilized till the very end, to the point that even congratulate Donald Trump, and they said one thing that I really liked a lot, and they said, you cannot love your country only when you win. You love your country all the times, regardless if you win or lose. If you lose, then of course you need to see what went wrong and what you could do better next time in order to prevail in the democratic mechanism. So these were really, really presidential words, and like kudos to the guy as well. Regardless of if you think you're one political side or the other, but respect for these words and for the institution of the presidency. Now, so what's gonna be the impact of Donald Trump? Like 1 minute after he's gonna be back at the White House and sworn in as the president in charge of the United States, the impact is gonna be zero. Okay, so people starting to talk about, like, from one side, oh my God, Donald Trump is gonna bring so much inflation, and on the other side, tariff, and it's gonna cut the deficit, blah 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 blah. Guys, yeah, these are all discussions, narrative, perhaps, but realistically speaking, in the first year as president, what happens in markets and the economy is not a result of actions or laws or regulations that are passed by the new president, but is basically the tail of the effect of the laws, initiatives, and policies that were taken by the previous government. Okay, so if there is continuation of government, so if an incumbent president is being reelected, then you have continuity of policies. But in reality, when you have this kind of situation in the first year of Donald Trump presidency, what's going to happen in markets and the economies is going to still be the consequence of decision, policy, and regulation taken by Joe Biden administration. So now, why is this? Very simple, because there is no material time for all the new action, policy, and initiative to start bearing fruit so quickly, and to overcome eventually the effect of the previous policies that were in place, right? Very simple. And whoever says the opposite, I mean, it's completely BS, okay? I have no other way to comment that. So for the first one and a half year of Donald Trump, he's not going to have a magic wand. It's not going to come there. Inflation is going to disappear. Perhaps he's even going to match to, either increase salary without pricing increasing. So like increase the well-being of the population. Is not going to be able to dramatically cut the deficit or reduce the debt and whatnot. Okay, it doesn't have a magic wand. It's not like an Avenger hero or anything. Okay, and we need to be realistic about that. What is the current situation of the market? The current situation of the market is that there is an incredibly speculative behavior, irrational exuberance due to an excessive amount of liquidity in the system. Debt keeps being piled up, okay, by the US Treasury with really no way out. At the moment, there is not a plan, and they will carry on for the next 2 months at least. And if they carry on for the next 2 months at this pace, we are talking about easily 1.5 trillion more in debt, okay? Think about that. And do you think anything is going to change in the first months of Trump? Like the US Treasury is going to stop refinancing its debt? Of course not, okay? So realistically speaking, under Donald Trump, we might see a $40 trillion debt for the United States. And, there's nothing much that it can do about this. What it can do is having like policy to slow this growth and eventually turn this growth. But in order for this to be possible, the deficit needs to disappear, okay, and become surplus. So there is only one way for that to happen, and is to draconian cost cutting of all sort of like unnecessary government spending. And I really hope he has the guts to do that. And you know what? Considering he knows he is not going to be reelected because this is his last and second term, there is a chance that he might actually take very, very, very big action, because at the end of the day, like, there's nothing to lose and he all has to gain. Yeah, there are going to be like consequences. People needs to step up and, sober up from all these years of like helicopter money, easy stimmies, student debt to like be cancelled, as if it wasn't even there, so on and so forth, right? So potentially speaking, yes, this opportunity. The real question is gonna be like, going through it, or it's gonna be ended up like in the internal planning politics of the Republican Party that is gonna like work towards the next presidential election or whatnot. We don't know. But one thing I can say, for him, in order to steer the ship towards the right direction, there is a huge degree of pain that the population needs to be ready to bear. And personally speaking, to me, it looks like he has the mandate to do so. So after 1.5 years, then like all these actions that hopefully he takes right away at the beginning of his mandate will start bearing their fruit in the second, third, and eventually into the fourth year. Furthermore, there is one specific point in time that is coincident with this time frame that I just brought to you. On May 2026, Jerome Powell will end being the chairman of the Federal Reserve. I know, like, the Federal Reserve supposed to be independent, blah, 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 mandate on the full employment and inflation. Come on, guys, let's be serious. The Fed has been acting more and more politically through the years, but objectively, the action taken in the past 2 years had nothing to do with the economy or the inflation. From the BTFP to rescue like U.S. regional banks, and the BTFP effectively was bailout, like a temporary bailout without any law or anything, to like cutting rates 50 basis points before elections, trying to give the incumbent administration a big tailwind with all these crazy bullish markets, okay, that they don't even know where to put the liquidity anymore. Stocks keeps going up. Credit spreads in the more market are so tight. And simply because people, they have all this money and they keep buying more and more garbage, so the spread's coming down, like, and everything else. Okay? Donald Trump cannot remove him. Okay? However, it can be removed for cause. And there are plenty of causes that can be brought up on Jerome Powell. But the truth is that it will be required 2/3 of the majority of the Senate to remove a chairman of the Federal Reserve currently in charge. And this is why it's very, very, very difficult for it to happen unless Powell does something incredibly bad or something incredibly bad about him comes up, that then both parties really want to get rid of him. But reasonably speaking, he's going to be there till May 2026. So, and that point in time, effectively, is going to be coincident with all the policies and regulations and the initiatives that Donald Trump took in the first 1.5 years. When he leaves, they're going to start bearing their fruit. So having a Federal Reserve chairman in charge that is aligned with that can seriously, provide a huge boost to all these initiatives that are supposed to heal a U.S. economy that honestly is in a horrible situation for anyone that lives in the real world. All those people that live in their ivory towers, that they just like eat, chew, and spit out BLS stupid like statistics, everything is fine. It's not fine. Just look at the results of the elections. With all due respect, I'm not American, but I've seen things from far. And how things came across from far is that on one side you had the party of the VIP and whatever else, and on the other side you had a party trying to really talk, and particular talk to the heart of the middle class, the lower class, people that are the backbone of a country and that are super tired of becoming poorer and poorer while they work harder and harder. In the meantime, quantitative easing throws gasoline to the wealth inequality, and who's rich becomes richer because financial assets keep going up in value. Okay? So, first part of Donald Trump presidency is going to be, nothing is going to change realistically. From second part, in particular from May 2026, things hopefully will start eating and then bringing the results of putting everything back in the right direction. What does this mean? Okay, this means that all this gigantic bubble and distortion in markets and economy that people are pretending not to see is gonna, has a very high chance to become very hard to keep in place in the next 1.5 years. You have a huge amount of commercial real estate debt that needs to be refinanced. You have trillions of dollars of corporate debt across the world that needs to be refinanced. Debt that was taken at much lower rate, and at this current rate, a lot of corporates are gonna have serious problems. You have banks that are honestly walking on waters right now, because if you look at their books, and if you look at the prices they have in the market, two completely different worlds. Okay. Furthermore, you have other countries outside US, in particular Germany, that can become a huge problem. Germany is a very big economy. It is an economy that, even if it's not in the official data because they're very smart about that, but there is a lot of debt in Germany. Simply is not being accounted as public. The subprime market is huge and so on. So there are all these mines placed around markets and the economy that can really trigger in the next 1.5 years. And no one should be surprised by the fact that if things become very bad in markets and economies, they will blame Trump, even if, objectively speaking, and without consideration of being on one party to another, character or not, will have no fault about that, okay? He will have responsibility of what he's going to do when he's back in charge, and you will start to see the consequence of that from mid-2026 onwards. But they will blame him, okay? So be prepared about that. I wrote an article about this, full of details about inflation, about market, about the poor state of the banking system, and so on. And people are even saying, oh, because of tariffs, inflation is going to be even worse during Trump presidency. All right, people. Where you were during the previous 4 years of Trump presidency, I'm not sure why, like, mainstream media and all these commentators around, they always come up with this nonsense garbage, okay? Truth is, Donald Trump is a businessman, and he always used very typical business negotiation tactics in order to get what he wanted. How many draconian tariffs is slapped on other economies outside US during his previous 4 years? Go check that, So is not stupid. Like, someone that is elected as the president of the strongest country in the world is not a stupid person. Not him, not Biden, not Obama, whatever. So everyone that keeps portraying as stupid is going to put tariff that's going to be very bad for inflation because it's going to increase the cost for US. Do you think he doesn't know it? That's, of course, a negotiation tactic. And in business, he's going to try to find a middle ground where he's going to get benefits for the US, but also the counterpart countries will also have to give up something. And perhaps there will be advantages of that might not be that straightforward for an external and maybe not very, focused observer, but something that gets negotiated on the economic table on one side, there might be like a geopolitical or defense benefit for the other side and whatnot, okay? So let me be clear. Anyone that comments on him, on his team and whatever, as if they are clueless, stupid, is a stupid person for real himself. Like, these guys wouldn't be there if they were not bright people. They might have, their shortcomings, they might have their behavioral problems, whatever, but surely they're not stupid, okay? And clearly they don't want to tarnish their legacy, their face, their name, and whatnot, okay? So to conclude on this first part of today's episode, I'll just say strap on, because Donald Trump doesn't have a magic wand. Markets being so bullish have they been, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. In particular, people started bidding banks. I'm like, you guys crazy? Like, seriously? What do you think? Like, it's gonna happen there. It's gonna, all these zombie CRE building all around that now are even redefaulting is gonna create people out of nowhere, and employees put them back. So the lenders are gonna, receive rents again from corporates, renting unnecessary space. So let's be realistic. Strap on, the next 1.5 years are not gonna be pleasant, but there will be opportunities in the market, as I explained. And frankly, if it does what it promised, if you are able to be disciplined and be there and grab those opportunities, then the tailwind that everyone is going to have on his back is going to give the opportunity to create really generational wealth. While all those that are now trading and enjoying the rational exuberance a fear of missing out and whatnot, as it always happens, there will be, instead of counting the profit, counting the losses. All right, now let's move to the second part of today's episode. And let's talk about the Fed, in particular, how Jerome Burns, because that is his real identity. I don't think I should call him like Jerome Powell. It's really behaving as a reincarnation of Arthur Burns, as far as I'm concerned. And this week, as I posted on X, I actually used an analogy, because effectively, the chairman of the Federal Reserve right now is behaving like the captain of the Titanic. Let's think about this. The captain of the Titanic was towards the end of his career. He has this prestigious post of being the captain of the newest passenger ship and biggest passenger ship ever built at that time. He could have the opportunity to put his name in history for the fastest crossing of the Atlantic, and so on. Okay? But, of course, this captain had a lot of experience, all right? And then there is a part of the movie in which you see the conversation between the representative of the company owning the ship and the captain. And, of course, the representative of the company really wanted to make headlines, to make it big and whatnot, and is pushing the captain to increase the speed of the ship and really get to those KPIs, effectively, that would have made him look great. And the captain, honestly, doesn't push back that much, okay? What does he have to gain in pushing back, right? Personally speaking, not much. And on the false premises that the ship was super strong, the newest, and, couldn't ever be sunk. Perhaps he also had a misperceptions of the risk that he could take. Furthermore, he had warnings of icebergs, and he even discussed that. But at the end, he decides to ignore these warnings and go ahead, embracing the view of the owner of the ship, okay? Ultimately, this decision will end up being catastrophic, right? Now, this week, the Fed cut rates by another 25 basis points. And on Friday, the S&P 500 closed above 6,000 points for the first time ever. I mean, I know we already discussed about this, right? But in the last conference, you could tell that Jerome Powell was not very relaxed or very confident as he was before, right? And in particular, when the journalist asked him if he would consider to resign because the incoming new president doesn't endorse him, he categorically denied, and they said he couldn't be sent away. True, but frankly speaking, this should have been the right answer if Jerome Powell, for the past 4 years, in particular the past 2, would have behaved as an independent Fed chairman. Thing that he didn't do at all. He has always been a person with an eye, maybe two, or a ear, maybe two, pointed towards the asks of the politicians, the administrators in place. This is very obvious. And because of that, he's clearly not an independent person. So claiming that he cannot be let go because the Fed is independent while he didn't behave independently is actually quite bad, right? And going back to the analogy of the captain of the Titanic. So if Jerome Powell, or Burns, as his last name should be changed in the official records, acted independently, he would never have cut rates 50 basis points on the 18th of September. That decision was so reckless and inconsiderate that, as I'm speaking right now, mortgage rates in the U.S. are back around 7.3%. 10-year yields went up 80 basis points after he cut the Fed funds 50 basis points. rates all over the world are going up, in particular on the longer part of the curve, the one that central banks cannot really control as much as they want us to believe they do. They can use like yield curve control, they can use like tricks and whatever, but in reality, the more they stretch things, the higher the chances that things break loose and they start heading towards where they should be, similar to an elastic band, right? So instead of cutting rates, you should have either keep it stable, but frankly speaking, you should have keep increasing rates. Why? Because if you measure inflation properly, since the Fed rate cycle began, the US, but many other countries out there, they never had positive real interest rates. Never. This is why this rate hike cycle didn't really hurt stock euphoria that much so far. This is why liquidity keeps being pumped in the market. This is why credit card outstanding balances keep soaring. This is why buy now, pay later balances are going bananas. This is why zombie companies can still find funding, so on and so forth. Okay, if rates were truly restrictive, the market as it stands in the current structure and with the current amount of debt the overall system carries would have behaved in this way, simply because there would have not been all this abundance of liquidity to keep bidding things out of the wazoo, ultimately detaching prices from reality. And I'm not here to make the NVIDIA example again, or all these companies like tech, blah, blah, blah. Let's take a very simple example. Let's think about Costco. Costco is a chain of, it's a grocery chain, okay? It's not very different from Walmart and the other supermarket chains, right? How the hell you can explain Costco being trading at 55 price earning unless we are in a massive bubble? So are you telling me that Costco is having the same growth expectation of NVIDIA without any comment about where this growth expectation come from or they're realistic or not? But that's effectively like you have Costco and NVIDIA at the same price earning. Is Costco like a startup? Is a high growth tech company? I mean, why an investor should invest in Costco at 55? Are they investing in the business? No, because if they invest in the business, as I said last week, they will wait 55 years before making a positive return on their investment. So effectively, like they are simply buying that specific share because it keeps going up and under the confidence that someone else is going to buy from them at a higher price, regardless of the fundamental of the business. They are not buying Costco to, keep it there for the next 55 years. Not at all. So we have inflation that is much higher than what the data say. And if people go to the supermarket, if they buy an insurance, buy a car, and whatever, they can see that. The reason why, in particular US, you don't see much impact on the consumers yet is simply because everyone is piling up on consumer debt, because all these like banks and shadow banks are still flooded with liquidity and need to put it somewhere to keep growing on their side, to keep beating expectations, to keep earning excessive profits they can use to buy back shares and paying dividends, ultimately increasing wealth inequality. So we have the inflation. We have an economy that, if you look at US manufacturing, is in a disastrous situation. Like it's in contraction since, I think, 2 years now, something like that. Like if you look at employment, say, oh, employment is really low. Hold on a second. Are you sure about that? Like the BRS just admitted right before election, and everyone ignored. All the mainstream media kind of reported it a little bit and then they quickly forgot. Just admitted they created 1 million jobs out of thin air. And you trust their numbers? You trust the fact that in their own household surveys and in their own companies and private sector surveys that are effectively two faces of the same medal, the data are completely diverging, and this happened when employment has been greatly overestimated. Do you trust data on employment when the BLS comes out and said, oh, I overestimated employment previous month because we didn't take into account the hurricane that hit the south of US? I'm like, what are you talking about? I mean, so clearly you have a Federal Reserve that is cherry-picking data. It's cherry-picking data because it's clearly fulfilling a political mandate, not its mandate of having low, under control inflation and full unemployment, and to protect the well-being and strength of the economy as a whole, because everyone is getting so impoverished. People that don't own enough financial assets are seeing their purchasing power evaporating. So you have a Fed that is clearly not political independent, that on the basis that the Fed should be politically independent, the guy cannot be removed. I'm sorry, but no, this is not going to end up well. And frankly speaking, now that he's going to remain in charge in complete disagreement with the president that is going to come, I'm not sure it's going to bode very well for markets while he ends his mandate. Because, I mean, what's his incentive to just switch side and help if he already knows that his job is not going to be there anymore after his term ends, right? Is he going to, undercut the current administration? I don't think he's going to do it very explicitly, but I have a strong gut feeling he's not be that corporate. Furthermore, they are already covering their asses, sorry for the word. Why? The New York Fed already came out and saying, we are aware that banks are using dirty tricks in order to not recognize the losses in the loan books into the income statements. They keep postponing the repayment of effectively defaulted commercial real estate loans. They don't account the value of assets properly, and everything is kept into hold to maturity books and so on. So you cannot even say they're not aware, because going back to what I said at the very beginning of this podcast, even if these people might be acting not, very intelligently from our perspective, in reality, they're not stupid. They know very well what's going on. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there, okay? So they wouldn't have their job. So maybe even if they don't command the tools to fully understand what's going on, they're not that stupid to even dismiss things that are so blatantly obvious, okay? So the Fed, as the captain of the Titanic, just increased the speed despite the big iceberg warning that we keep receiving. What are these warnings? Look at the spread between 10-year and 2-year rates. Look at the spread between 10-year and 3-month rates. The 10-year minus 3 months is basically the only one left in negative territory, and it's very close to turn positive. Look at the government bond market volatility. Look at the amount of repurchase agreement that some banks keep using in order to plug the liquidity holes without going to back at the Fed discount window. Look at all this warning signal, and furthermore, inflation is already reaccelerating. Furthermore, salary increases are not keeping paces with the inflation, so people are getting even more impoverished. Markets are completely out of control, and you cut rates 25 basis points because, as some people pointed out, they felt about it. I mean, I don't want to make much joke about this. I know they have their own discussions and things, By the end of the day, and here I want to conclude, we should stop believing in this myth of independent central banks. Clearly, they're not, okay? And this is the reason why their actions can be potentially dangerous, because central banks have been created in modern society on the premise that they would have remained independent, exactly not to repeat the same mistakes that the first central banks experiment in the 1800s ended up doing in Europe, where, for example, in France, central banks ended up like monetizing the country debt and printing paper money, whatever, till the whole system collapsed. So in the early 1900s, the founding fathers of the modern democracy saw all those things happening, saw what happened in the Weimar Republic and whatever, and they said, okay, here we need a lender of last resort that set rates in the market and they can counterbalance in period of liquidity stress. But if a bank is insolvent, the bank is insolvent and the business will be shut. Then they started to have an inflation mandate. Then they started to have an employment mandate. Then here, then there. And we ended up with a situation that is not that different from what central banks were at the beginning of the 1800s. And how did it end? The whole system imploded. So I really understand those people that say we should end the Fed. But we should end this type of Fed, this type of central banking. Not because central banking is useless. Simply because it lost its original purpose of effectively being the lender of last resort in a system that otherwise should have been left operating within the rules of an open, free, and competitive market that always benefits the people and the economy. And there are even extreme cases. Like, think about the Swiss central bank. They're basically an hedge fund, derivative stocks. They even have of SMCI. Think about the Bank of Japan that basically like bail out the whole stock market and control it at its will. And we need to be careful because as things stand now, I wouldn't even be shocked we get in a situation in which the Federal Reserve will start buying stock. At the end of the day, during 2020, they bought corporate bonds without really any true economical meaning. They bought Berkshire bond, they bought Apple bonds. Are we serious? So the distance from there to just let them buy stock is not very far. So here I would like to conclude and remind again to be careful, because the Fed is not really helping, because Donald Trump is not in the position to, change things one day to another and so on. So make sure to prepare in advance, because in particular in this kind of market, if shit is the fan, it's that very quickly, and rather safe than sorry. So thanks again for listening to me today. Don't forget to, if you want to support me, to subscribe on my channel. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, and really thanks again for your support. Hope you enjoyed. Feedbacks are very, very welcome, and